hard stories build empathy. And I think empathy is a key component to being a good storyteller. And having sort of like that, they talk about people who've gone through trauma, your weaknesses out of that can also become your superpowers and your strengths in the form of discernment. You can look at a room and instantly get a read on the temperature. You can look at somebody and instantly know everything that's going on with them. Those are very powerful skills to have. You want to be able to tell someone else's story by understanding them on a deep level.
Hey there, you're listening to the Priority Pursuit Podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping small business owners define, maintain, and pursue both their personal and business priorities so they can build lives and businesses they love. I'm your host, Victoria Rayburn, and guys, I have a quick question for you. Have you ever listened to an audiobook and loved it so much that you then immediately went and read the actual book, like the hardcover copy? Well, I can honestly say that has only happened to me one time. I listened to Slow Growth Equals Strong Roots by Mary Marantz while walking Hattie bit by bit, and so much of this incredible book hit home for me that I simply had to read the hard copy as well. Plus, it's really pretty. If you're on YouTube, you can see that I'm holding it up right now. It's absolutely beautiful. But anyway, today I cannot begin to express how excited I am to have Mary Marantz herself on the show. When I first discovered Mary and her husband Justin, it was through the photography world. You see, Justin and Mary are big names in the photography industry, but there is so much more to them than their successful photography business. You see, Mary grew up in a trailer in rural West Virginia. The first of her immediate family to go to college. She went on to earn a master's degree in moral philosophy and a law degree from Yale. And then after turning down six-figure salary law firm offers in London and New York and starting a photography business with her husband, where they were later named one of the prestigious Pro Photo Legends of Light. Guys, their work is beautiful. You should just check it out, even if you aren't a photographer. But anyway, they have since gone on to build a successful online education platform for thousands of creative entrepreneurs worldwide. Mary is also the best-selling author of her books Dirt and Slow Growth Equals Strong Roots, and the host of the top podcast, The Mary Marantz Show, which I also highly recommend listening to. Her work has been featured on CNN, MSN, Business Insider, Bustle, Thrive Global, Southern Living, Hallmark and Family, and so many other places. Mary and Justin live in an 1880s fixer-upper by the sea in New Haven, Connecticut, with their two fluffy golden retrievers. And Mary has committed her career to helping small business owners and leaders see their worth outside of their work. And today, Mary is joining us on the show to break down why, as small business owners and leaders, it's important to embrace slow growth and strong roots. And guys, I just also want to say really quick that, we are right before the new year. Chances are you are thinking about what your New Year's resolutions are, what your goals for the new year are going to be. And as a result, I'm really excited that we are having this conversation about slow growth now, because, well, if you can enter the new year just with a new mindset, I can almost promise you it's going to be so much more rewarding. But Mary, I will let you introduce yourself more thoroughly in just a moment, but I cannot begin to tell you how excited I am to have you on the show. Welcome.
Oh my gosh, Victoria. Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me. And second of all, I just want to know, what is the bill I will have to pay to have you go around and introduce me all the time? Because man, that's wow. If you could just whisper that to me every morning, then I think
it'll be a podcast episode. We'll just make it part of your affirmation list.
I love it. Well, I'm so happy to be here. So thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. And guys, if you live in the Indianapolis area and you saw some woman walking down the Monon, teary-eyed walking her dog, that was probably me. And this was the book I was probably listening to, but it's absolutely wonderful. And Mary, I'm so excited to dive deeper into what exactly it means to embrace slow growth and strong roots. But before we do that, can you please introduce yourself? I know that I gave really just a piece of your story, but you've had a journey as an entrepreneur and small business owner. So please take us all the way back to the beginning
Yeah.
and lead us up to where you are now as a best-selling author, speaker, podcast host. Tell us all the things.
Yeah, I love that. You know what that kind of reminded me of? I was telling you before we hopped on that I was recently at an author's retreat in the Smoky Mountains. 26 authors and podcasters from all over the country got together to kind of share what's working and what to try differently, things like that. And when I was flying back, I had my headphones in and I was listening to this song. It's from United Pursuit, and it has these lyrics that say, "Take me back to the beginning, when I was running through the fields with you," basically. And it's such a beautiful song. It makes me so emotional because I feel like all of us listening have these parts of our story that, whether they were really hard or whether it was just something that we ache for, there are these parts of our story that formed us and made us who we are. And sometimes when I think back on my story, I can sort of see this ghost of like little Mary running through the fields where I grew up in a single wide trailer on the top of a mountain in rural West Virginia, these very overgrown weeds behind that trailer giving way to kind of the deep, dark woods. And even though there were parts of that were so incredibly hard, which maybe we'll talk more about, there is still this, part of me that misses that littlest version. And so I bring that up and I start with that because what I have come to find out about entrepreneurs over, 15 plus years of serving them through courses or speaking or teaching is that there are way more of us with a muddy story than you would ever guess by looking at our beautiful websites, our put together outfits at the conferences, our business cards, whatever it is, our email lists, our social media following. There's so many people who are walking around feeling like every room they walk into, they have something to prove, that they have to walk in without a hair out of place, just as the bare minimum standard they have to hit to be invited into those rooms, to be asked to sit down at those tables. And the very first time I spoke at a conference and I stood at the front of the room, for many of the times we'd spoken at conferences before then, it was all about having a new outfit, talking about how well our business was doing, whatever. And I stood up and instead I showed a picture of that trailer and I said, "I am the girl in the trailer." That was the first time there was a line out the door, down the hallway of people who wanted to come talk to me, not because of me, but because they wanted to look me in the face and say, "I am the girl in the trailer too." I never knew somebody like this could stand on these stages. And so I think that's the most important thing I want people to know right off the bat is we're going to talk a lot about giving up achieving for your worth. And that is because I've spent a lifetime trying. I've spent a lifetime trying to run away from that trailer, only to get to a point where I'm on an airplane after spending time with all these authors and speakers, aching to go back. So that's where we'll kind of start, I think.
Oh, yes. And Mary, this is not on the list of questions that I sent you, but you said you're cool to go off the cuff, so I'm just going to ask. But out of curiosity, do you think that there is some kind of tie between people who have muddy pasts and then choosing to become entrepreneurs, choosing to become business owners?
Yeah.
Because like you said, it takes a long, it's not typically the information that people share initially, but I know at least for me, myself included and like my closest business friends, they do share similar kinds of backgrounds. So, out of curiosity, do you see that with your students? Do you see that with your clients? And why do you think that is? I know that's like a big psychological question.
No, I already have a theory, so we're in good shape. Here's my theory. The short answer, and then I'm going to go for the long answer, but I'll help people with the short answer, is that I think hard stories build empathy. And I think empathy is a key component to being a good storyteller, whether that's a photographer or an author or a speaker or a coach understanding someone else's story. It all starts with empathy and having sort of like that, they talk about people who've gone through trauma, your weaknesses out of that can also become your superpowers and your strengths. In the form of discernment. You can look at a room and instantly get a read on the temperature. You can look at somebody and instantly know everything that's going on with them. Those are very powerful skills to have if you're going to speak from a stage or if you're going to coach somebody one-on-one or be an author or be a photographer. Any of those cases, you want to be able to tell someone else's story by understanding them on a deep level. And so I do think that one of two things tends to happen for people who had really hard stories. They will either become empathetic and want to run so hard from their story that they want to do something very different. So they become an entrepreneur, or they will be so marked by the fact that there wasn't a lot growing up that they will choose the safe corporate job or the safe, I almost did that. I went to law firms in London and New York to, have it spend a summer there. And I had full ride offers, bonuses, moving benefits, the whole thing. We'll take you to the, Broadway shows every night, whatever. And that's very tempting. It's very, very tempting to take the life that's going to feel very set and very settled. And, my parents, when I got into law school, were like, done.
Yes.
You're good now. That life is like paved out in front of you. And what I discovered, the thing that kind of helped me make that decision, and maybe this is for somebody listening who still is in that cubicle or that corporate job or that job with the good health benefits, not saying you have to leave tomorrow, but the thing that really stuck out to me is that if someone else has made a sacrifice so that my life can be different, then to settle is to dishonor that sacrifice. To live a life that feels safe, but ultimately is not what I know I was put here to do, to not be fully alive to the work I am called to do, that actually dishonors the sacrifice that was made. And listen, I know how hard it is. I am the first person when we're coaching to say, do it smart, do it with a safety net, do it with an emergency fund, like read the book Quitter from John A. Cuff, do this well, but begin. We have a new year stretching out in front of us and it's so easy. I always say Decembers don't happen in Decembers, they happen in January. We determine what December 2024 is going to feel like by thinking about it now. And so if we want to actually start to make moves on these dreams we can't go a day without thinking about, then we start by saying, what does it look like to live my one wild and precious life fully alive? So empathy is the short answer. The long answer is I think it can go one of two directions.
Love that. Well, I'm so glad that I asked.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so Mary, before we get into the rest of the conversation, I feel like everybody just needs a point of reference, almost a definition. But what does it mean to have slow growth and strong roots as both an individual and as a small business owner or leader? And then also, why do you feel called to spread the message about embracing slow growth, especially to entrepreneurs who aren't exactly notorious for doing anything slowly?
Yeah. Well, Justin Marantz, who was sitting right here, he gets the full credit for that phrase because it was very early in our business, our photography business. We had just started it. We were about, we'll say like a year in. And we were watching all of these people who had started around the same time as us in different parts of the country. And their business was just taken off. It was just like, it felt like it was exploding overnight. And we're over here just sort of chugging along. And we were at this taco restaurant. We were sitting outside. It was really bright and I had sunglasses on. I'm very grateful for that because I was actually crying my eyes out. So frustrated. Why is it happening for them and not happening for us? When is this, 1 year in, when is this ever going to happen? It can be very dramatic when you first become an entrepreneur, I feel like. And Justin said to me, he said two things. Number one, he said, they're over there running sprints, but we were created to run marathons. And he said, they're going to go somewhere fast, but ultimately, if they don't change something, they're just going to run around in circles and end up back where they started. And we were put here to go the long haul. We're building something that lasts. That's marathon running. And the second thing he said was, the slow growth equals strong roots. And I didn't want any of those things to be true, Victoria. I was like, this is the worst day ever. And they always kind of say, be really careful which mantras you pick for yourself because life has a really funny way of making you live them out. And so, you mentioned in the intro, like we were able over time, given this variable of time, to build a business that was very wildly successful. But we have never been the people where it was suddenly like we were just the hot thing everywhere. We have been this very slow, very steady, very consistent climb. And the upside of that is that when we did get to being one of the names in the industry, one of the leaders in the industry, nobody doubted our place there. We had proven ourselves. We had proven a reputation. People not only liked us, they respected us. Or maybe if they didn't like us very much, they respected us. And that kind of character, I think, is only forged. That kind of record is only forged with the variable of time. And so I say that as somebody with empathy, like we were talking about. I know how bad and how painful it is to want it to happen right now and to see it happening for other people. They started 2 years after me and they're charging twice as much. Like, what's happening? And I've also had the benefit of being in this industry long enough to see people be flashes in the pan. And so in slow growth, I have this section called weeds, flowers, and trees. And I say for all of us in business and in life, we can choose to be one of these three types. It's very tempting in the beginning to want to be just like a weed. We see somebody pop up overnight to 6 feet tall. We see them multiplying with dizzying speed, and we say, I want to grow just like that. But who among us has not gone through one of these fields like I had behind my trailer, bloop, 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 pulling out these 6-foot weeds to see they have a half an inch of roots holding them up. And so the first storm comes and they get knocked right over. And ultimately they grew for themselves. They were invasive. They came and they took for their own growth, and they didn't care what they choked out around them. And so we see, I think there's this very unscientific, unproven theory that there's kind of a half-life for however quickly somebody rises up in an industry. When they do it that way, we will see them just as quickly. That character won't be there to anchor them, and we'll see them just as quickly fall away. Flowers are things of beauty. We create beauty in the world. We need more beauty in the world. That's certainly always a good thing. But for all of us, I want something more, which is to be trees, because trees grow taller and higher than any weed to dizzying heights, these redwood giants, but they don't do it quickly. It can take 100 years to get to where they're going. And they are a thing of beauty in and of themselves, but they are not satisfied to be merely that. They want to be shade and shelter for others. They want to bear this fruit that can be given away. And when I think about my life, when I think about my business, if I had to choose between the two, fast and did it for myself and got knocked over by the first storm, or, there's just going to be a different timetable for leaders like this to walk among the giants. It's going to take some time, but you're going to build something people are going to admire and respect and be served by. I'd rather take my time.
Absolutely. And honestly, we could just hit end right now and everybody could just change their mindset and try to be a tree. I mean, there's so much wisdom there. And I mean, such a paradigm shift for a lot of small business owners. Like you said, it's like we want to, whether it's because of social media or just because we live in a world of instant gratification, we would love to start our businesses and be a big name tomorrow. But
yeah. And you know what I would just add to that is I don't know when fast became the goal. When we really break it down, what we're saying is I want the most interesting thing you can say about me to be how little time I've been at this work. That's actually not a really powerful legacy, is it? It's I hardly had to try. I hardly thought about it at all. I didn't put in any effort to this, and I got all sorts of attention. But the minute we stop acting like attention is the only goal in this social media driven instant gratification world, and we say, what is the thing that survives just a little bit of going viral or a little bit of getting some new eyes on it? I always tell people this distracted work of just trying to create content for social media, this will never be our legacy. Deep work happens in the stuff that you cannot produce overnight. And you cannot say, oh, what? Like Reese Witherspoon, what? It's hard? Elle Woods, what? It's hard? No, I want to do the work that it was all of me to create, that it did bring me to the end of myself to actually birth into the world. And that is going to be hard work. It's going to be deep work. It's going to be work. There's a reason that we talk about this word passion, sometimes meaning suffering. The biggest, best work we'll put out there will not always come easy. So I don't know. I just think the things we reward these days they're upside down. They're an upside down economy. They're this fleeting currency of more, how much, how many, how fast, and it does not last.
Many small businesses don't have an effective marketing strategy, and because of this, they try one tactic after another without seeing results. This not only prevents consistent business growth, it makes managing marketing efforts more difficult than it should be. As a marketing agency for small businesses, we understand how frustrating it can be when hard work doesn't deliver the results that you want. Because of this, TreeFrog has developed a proven 4-step marketing system that will help any small business grow. On our website, you can also schedule a 30-minute discovery call to discuss working with TreeFrog to build a marketing strategy that will allow your small business to finally see the growth you've been working so hard to achieve.
What would you do with an extra 45 minutes every workday? That would save you 16 hours a month, or roughly 8 days a year. And over the course of your career, we're talking about over 1 year of your life saved. All that time back. Well, many independent business owners spend far more than 45 minutes a day on administrative tasks. And with HoneyBook, you can get that time back and then some. HoneyBook lets you easily manage projects, contracts, invoices, scheduling, and client communication, saving you time and allowing you to better serve your clients. For a discount on your first year of HoneyBook, visit honeybook.com and subscribe with the code PriorityPursuit. 45 minutes a day adds up quickly. Use it to focus on what matters most.
Absolutely. And not to mention too that, when you are so focused on that quick growth, yes, you have to put your head down and grind. And I think what a lot of people do forget about is, what does life look like at home when you have made that business decision? So this is the Priority Pursuit podcast. We focus on business priorities and personal priorities. So just have to throw that out there really quick. If you were a weed, there is no way you have time to focus on your personal priorities in addition to your business priorities. But anyway,
that's good. No, that's good.
So Mary, okay, I feel like because I've read your book, I want to do all this prefacing before we've already gotten into so much meat, but before we get even deeper, I just feel like we got to go over a couple preface kinds of things just so people really have a good frame of reference for the rest of our conversation. And because I know that so many of our listeners are going to identify with this and that it's going to be helpful to them, can you break down the 5 achiever types? This was definitely one of those, I listened to it and I went back and I probably read this section of your book a couple times as well. Just because, for me personally, it's there are a couple that I really identify with, and it was even more revealing than the Enneagram in some ways. So,
dang. Okay, put that on all of the graphics when you release them. Even more revealing than the Enneagram. Heck yeah, it is. I love that. No, I love the Enneagram. I am an Enneagram 4 wing 3, by the way. What are you?
I'm a 3-2.
Nice.
Yes.
Good.
I feel like a lot of us, creative entrepreneurs, small business owners, we hang out between that 2, 3, 4 area for the most part.
Yes, 100%. Okay, so when I was writing Slow Growth, I'm going to give you a little fun insider scoop, a backstory on Slow Growth. 6 years before I even had an agent, I guess probably 6 years before. Yeah, 6 years before I had an agent, we'll say. Or 6 years before I was writing the book. It does 6 years before. We'll just say that. Justin and I, in our photography business, had just gotten incredibly burned out, and we were doing all of these weddings. We were doing all of these magazine shoots for editors and local vendors who wanted to have their dresses photographed, things like that. And we were getting beautiful images, but we were never really the ones steering the ship. It wasn't our vision. It wasn't our timeline. We were forever being rushed on these photo shoots. And so just out of pure sheer exhaustion and desperation of burnout, we put together 2 shoots. One was in New Haven of a ballerina, and the other, we flew a small team of us to Venice, Italy, and we put together 4 or 5 looks while we were there. And they were purely for us, purely to just fall in love with this again. We came back and I think we edited up and shared exactly 3 images from that whole 2-day shoot in Venice. And then they just sort of sat on a hard drive and we didn't really know what to do with them. We thought about maybe submitting them. We thought about making a video because we'd done a lot of behind the scenes video, but nothing ever came of it. And so 6 years go by and I'm writing Slow Growth. And I'm trying to put words to what it has been like for me to be the woman always performing. And, I'm just describing these very visceral scenes. The words are just some sort of coming out, talking about I'm the tightrope walker. I'm up and I'm down and everywhere in between, waiting for the next upswing of a high to catch me just in time. My days have always been defined as as good or bad by the latest good thing that's happened to me. I am the performer. I'm always on my toes. I can never drop the act. I need to show other people how far I've come, but I need to make myself proud too. I'm the masquerader. I'm hiding in plain sight because I don't want to let anybody down. I'm the contortionist, twisting and turning myself up into tiny tethered knots because to contort is easier than to be criticized. And I feel like that was for somebody listening right now, because to contort is easier than to be criticized. Or I'm the illusionist in the distance. I can't even get started because I'm waiting for this perfect version of me off in the future that doesn't exist yet and probably never will. And I think I have to be her before I can actually even start, before I can show up. And so I'm writing the book, and we actually had an entirely different layout for this book. It was very preppy, very J. Crew, very Emily Lay, I would say. And I love that style. And that's it's not on brand for me. But when it came in, it just did not fit. It was a really cute coat that would look good on somebody else. And so we were back to the drawing board and, I'm just wringing my hands, racking my brain. What are we going to do? We're under a deadline. And Justin was the one who said, what if we went Vanity Fair the way that our photography business was always styled? What if we took, inspiration from what our photography website looked like with the blush and the dark charcoal gray, almost black, and the kind of Vanity Fair photos. And as soon as he said that, everybody was instantly yes, that, let's do that. And it also reminded me of these images. And and just one of those, like for me, my faith is really important to me. And one of those, like, God is in the details and there was a plan for this book all along. I just like realized how much these 5 different looks lined up exactly with the way I'd already described them in the manuscript of what it's like to be this woman. And so we actually have put together a quiz that corresponds to the different, that you're introduced throughout the book. I'll just kind of flip for the YouTube folks, by the way. I don't know like how bright we might be a little bright on the exposure. Justin's saying it's not so good. But I'll just kind of flip to a page that's maybe a little darker just to give you kind of a sense of how pretty this book is. But we'll see if you can see that. I'll kind of come closer. Justin's saying, no, you cannot. Okay. That's fine. Buy the book. You'll find out what I'm talking about.
Yes, it's beautiful.
Yeah, we put together a quiz that corresponds to the different types. It's achieverquiz.com or marymarantz.com/quiz. Either one will get you there. It takes like 2 minutes, 10 questions, super fast to take. And the results that you get, though, they tell you what each type's strengths are, where you get stuck and tripped up, get in your own head, and how you start to move forward with purpose again. And I get so many messages, so many emails, so many DMs of people saying, well, I'm sitting here crying my eyes out, Mary, because this 2-minute quiz just saw into my soul. And it really does, like the results really have kind of dialed into like what get, people stuck. And so that becomes kind of a framework of like, what's your achiever type? That's how you're going to sort of understand what your slow growth journey looks like. And here's how we move forward.
Yes, guys, I've taken the quiz. It's great. Highly recommend. And we will definitely include a link in the show notes. Like I said, super, super revealing. And I mean, especially again, if you are an achiever by nature, it really helps you understand kind of the why. And like Mary said, how you can move forward. Okay. So Mary, I know a lot of people are probably listening and thinking, all right, that sounds great. Slow growth sounds wonderful. However, I still am not really sure what that looks like from a practical level. So I do want to ask, what is the difference between slow growth and being stagnant? And why is it important to have a slow growth mindset? And then also for small business owners and leaders, like, do they need to hustle before they can embrace slow growth? I know I just threw a lot of questions at you, but I think a lot of people they like the idea of slow growth and, maybe they are in a season of burnout or they just know that they cannot work as hard as they have been forever.
Yeah.
So what does slow growth actually mean? And for those, again, who are afraid of does this mean I do nothing? Because that's obviously not what it means. Yeah. Right. So what's the difference between slow growth and being stagnant? Why is that mindset important? And then we can come back to the hustle question a little bit because I'm curious to know your answer.
Yeah. I love this question so much because the biggest thing that I want people listening, because I speak to it in a very tender-hearted way because I remember sitting at that taco restaurant and Justin saying, well, that's just not our race to run. And what I heard was, you're not fast enough. You're not good enough. You can't keep up with them. So let's demote ourselves to a different kind of, a slower pace. Let's just take a leisurely stroll while everybody else is just like sprinting ahead and winning. And the biggest thing I want you to hear from me is that slow growth does not require or demand or equate to small growth. I feel like my life has sort of been defined. I said this earlier of we were just like this slow, steady climb, but mixed in with that, there were these windfall moments. There were these sort of what the rest of the world could have assumed was an overnight success. For example, when I signed my book deal, it was not for 1 book or 2 books. It was actually for 5 books, which is not very heard of, very common in the author world. And so in many ways that felt like winning the lottery, getting into Yale for law school, which is the #1 law school, is sort of like getting a golden ticket to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. I have had these moments of windfall, but the thing is, when the rest of the world looks at it and they see an overnight success or they see a sudden, where it just feels like you've always been at the top or what have you, that success is actually standing on the firm foundation of years of slow growth that came before. If we start to heap spotlights and eyes and responsibilities and things you're being trusted to steward well onto somebody who has not done the backbone building work of character, they are going to crumble in a second, right? I heard somebody say you will be burned by the spotlight if you haven't gotten that character stuff right. And so do not think that slow growth has to mean you will be small. In fact, I actually have a working theory that some of the giants of any industry get there by taking their time. If you want to get somewhere that matters, go slow, they say. And so when I think about slow growth and I think about it in terms of hustle and I think about it in terms of, the mindset you have to kind of adopt. It is not that you're not going to do important work that matters. I am going to be honest with you. I'm from Appalachia in the 80s. My dad's a logger. I have a very strong work ethic. I have a tendency towards being a workaholic. I do have to work really hard to get those priorities right. So this isn't about not doing your part. It isn't about doing good work, the good work that was prepared for you in advance. It's simply about not being impatient. It's simply saying, hey, when this isn't happening as quickly as I want, what can I learn from this? When I see somebody getting something that I want, can I see them as somebody sent here to make me miserable? Or can I see them as a guide? Somebody a little further up ahead that I can say, okay, what can I learn from their example? What can I learn about what they did that worked, that would work for me? And so I think a lot of it is just sort of not being in such a rush, because I'm here to tell you, here's what I know about entrepreneurs more than anything in the world. If I were a genie in a bottle and I snapped my fingers and I gave you everything that you're wishing for and you had it overnight and now it was just yours and you did nothing to build it yourself with your own two hands, it would not matter to you. It would not mean as much to you as you doing the work, having that patience, stewarding it well, planting the seeds, and letting them do the work that they're meant to. I'm talking about all sorts of metaphors right now. I think we've moved from trees to seeds to whatever. But I had a realization not too long ago. When we think about putting seeds in the ground, one of the things you cannot do is go in and tear them open in the hopes of speeding up the process. There has to be this gap, this moment in the darkness before new life bursts forth that you cannot force. This is that moment, that miracle, when something else comes into play. And some of the best things that have happened in my life, I did the work, but the result that I got, there is a speed-worthy Keanu Reeves, it's finished on the map gap between what I could do through my own efforts alone and what actually happened. So I could get into a good law school on my own, but I couldn't get into that law school without some sort of, that magic that happens in between the planting and the harvest. So be willing to take your time is really what it boils down to.
Oh man, I love that. You're just full of so much wisdom. So Mary, kind of with that in mind though, and I think every business owner has a slightly different opinion on this, but do small business owners and leaders, do they need to hustle before they can embrace slow growth? Or, if somebody is starting their business today, is this something that they can do from the get-go? Yeah. I would love to hear your thoughts.
Well, man, listen, if you're listening and you're like, done, I'm on board, I just started my business and I'm going to do it, then please do. Please do. But I will say this. My book, Slow Growth, starts off with what I call the inciting incident of At Last Exhausted. And it's actually a passage that's taken from one of the very last entries of Dirt. So I write that manuscript for Dirt. I hand it off. I think I'm done. It's a story about making peace with your past. I'm out. Amazing. And as soon as I handed it off, I felt this message that was, you're only sort of halfway there. Like the second half of this journey, you can make peace with your past, but if your present is still prisoner to it, meaning you're still trying to achieve your way away from that story, then you're never truly free. And so that section that was actually originally written in Dirt becomes the first entry in Slow Growth. And I say it is an inciting incident, which is a moment, plot point, episode that thrusts our protagonist into a journey that will leave her forever and utterly changed by the ends. This narrative arc kind of catalyst. At Last Exhausted becomes the thing that kicks off Slow Growth, because to a certain extent, if you have not experienced burnout yourself, if you have not run after and chased after these highlight reels and gold stars and these things that you think will finally make you feel enough of something, if you have not gone after the biggest things, had them come true and still not felt like enough, then you won't believe me when I say there's never going to be an amount of more that will make you stop feeling less than. That has to be an inside job. And so it's kind of like when business owners would tell us when we were first getting started, you need to slow down, you're going to burn out. And we'd be like, says you, grandpa, you don't know how hard we can hustle, And then we became those old, wise, sage business owners saying, you better slow down, you're going to burn out. Mm-hmm. And they would say, listen, grandma, you don't know how hard we can run. So to a certain extent, you have to experience burnout for yourself. You have to know that it's not coasting off to the side of the road, running out of gas, a gentle stop on the gravel. It's like hitting a brick wall 90 miles an hour and then the transmission falls out, right? Like that's more like what true burnout feels like. In the same way, when I say slow, grow slow, take your time. Don't be in such a rush. We, to a certain extent, have to reach our own moment of at last exhausted, breathless and at last exhausted. You lay down and put your face on the cool, hard ground. this death to an old self before a new thing, the thrill of hope takes flight. These chains you have been carrying around, you've run so far out into the world only to find yourself back at the beginning. This one thought finally running through your mind you can't ignore. No matter how hard you run, you can't outrun you. And so we lay there in surrender and we say, all right, I've tried. I've tried to find wholeness in these ways the world offers. I've tried to find wholeness in all these things they tell me matter. I've tried and accomplished and checked, every mark on the list, only to see them multiply 10 more in their spot. And the more that I try to chase, the emptier I feel. And so maybe if getting into the number one law school isn't going to do it, if getting a book deal isn't going to do it, if, having our photography business get everywhere I hoped it would one day be, if I still am walking around, God set me free of me, with this feeling of it's still not enough, then maybe I have to go back to the beginning and say, what does it look like to do that work on the inside, to actually deal with the hole I feel like I'm carrying around in my heart, to make peace with this story, rather than constantly just trying to fill it with stuff. So 99.9% chance most people are going to have to do that. You're going to have to experience a little bit of that at last exhausted for yourself. If you're in the 1% who's like, nope, don't want to go there, I'm going to listen to you, I'm done. Yay, please do that. I'm so happy for you. But for myself and for most people I know, we first have to kind of taste that disappointment. It's just, it's like eating a whole bag of marshmallows and wondering why you feel still starving and kind of sick. That's how it is to achieve your way into worth.
Yes, I would love to say I had enough wisdom to, do things slowly from the get-go and have a healthy mindset, but not so much. So I very, very much relate to that. Mary, this has been a wonderful conversation. Before we do wrap up this episode, though, because, small business owners, they are very, very practical people who like to-do lists. So with that in mind, and also just in a culture that places so much value on success, how can people practically embrace a slow growth mindset and stop trying to achieve their way into worth? If they're listening and they're thinking like, all right, tomorrow is the day that slow growth, this is my new goal. This is my new priority. What can they do? Where do they get started? Other than, of course, reading your book.
Yes. So reading the book is a great number one. We'll put that out there. Number two, whether you are somebody who has like a faith background or not, this is going to be true of every single one of us. The number one way to get out of our own heads, the number one way to stop feeling this raw nerve ending all the time is to start serving other people. I talk about in Slow Growth, one of my favorite entries, it's talking about feeling like I have these two versions of me. The first version is calm. She's at peace. She knows what she was put here to do. She knows what she's called to do. She knows her gifts. She knows how they are in service to others. And so she just on a daily basis wakes up and says, what do you have for me today? The use of my gifts in service to others for your ultimate glory for the rest of my life. That's it. Unfortunately, that version of me, like a nesting doll, is inside this whole other version of me that's walking around in the world like one big root canal, like one big raw nerve ending. Every time the air hits, it sends me, railing into fight or flight again. And in that entry, it's called insatiable. That version of me is insatiable. It says that version of me is insatiable. I'm running down the road 100 miles an hour. My hair's on fire and I like the way it burns. And I have so many stacks of sweaters. There could never be enough future perfect versions of me to wear. And so when I think about practical, number one, the biggest way to get out of your own head and really and truly how humans were created for community, for service, for helping others. Like this is science, brain chemicals that are released when we help others, when we see other people helping other people. We are wired to be of service. So figure out how you can use your gifts to start to help others first and foremost. Do that for free. Do that as part of your business even. It doesn't have to always be free, but do that in a way where you start to say, how can I do this? Not because it's good for me, but simply because it will set somebody else into the world with their gifts and their story to go change lives. So that's the first one. And then the second part of that is my coach, Kim Butler, came up. We would do like goals setting around this time. Actually, every year she'd come up in December and she has a business called the Whiteboard Room because she would bring a big white poster board. We would do several of them and we would fill out different things. And she'd written my name in the middle, Mary, and we had written out all around it, all of the big blinking neon light goals that I'd seen come true that year. And, the page is absolutely filled. And I look at her and I say, but I'm the unhappiest I've ever been. And she kind of like takes her hands and she, blocks off all the goals, uses her arms to block off all the goals. And she hits my name really hard on the table. And she says, who is Mary without all of these goals? And I said, I knew in that moment what I was supposed to say, like, oh, I'm a child of God, I'm loved, whatever. And instead, the only thing that came to mind, and I just kind of screamed it out, was nothing. And her eyes get wide and my eyes get wide. We both look like these emojis. And she said, well, we're going to have to do the work to change that. And so practically, what does it look like for you to walk into a room and not be able to use any of your accomplishments to introduce yourself? What is left if you stripped all of that away? Who is, fill in the blank, your name, without all of these gold stars? What do you bring to the world? What were you uniquely wired with to serve other people? And then lean hard into that and get out of your own head by serving other people. It's the only way I have found to get any kind of relief from this achieving screaming in my head.
I love that. And I mean, that is also, I feel like, just so rooted in Christianity as well. And so when you hear things like that, to me, it's always just it's not surprising that similar things are in God's word, because that's the answer. He gave us the answer. Oh, awesome. Mary, again, this episode has just been full of so much wisdom. And, I got to fangirl a little bit. I feel like I got to read a great book and then ask the author my questions, which, oh man, how lucky am I? But before we do wrap up this episode, where can people find you, connect with you, find your books and your podcast, and learn more about the resources and just the many, many ways you serve small business owners and leaders?
Yeah, definitely. So for all the photographers listening, sort of the photography side, the photography course side, we have a really amazing lighting course that's like 50 plus modules long. It's sort of, we like to think of it as the only lighting course you'll ever need, as well as some posing courses, business courses, things like that. jmthestore.com. You can find all of our photography resources. And then on the other side, marymarantz.com is going to be a great hub where from there you can click out to each of the books, Slow Growth Equals Strong Roots, and my first book, Dirt. You can get over to the podcast. We've had so many amazing episodes. We've had Kathy Lee Gifford on. We just had the Duck Dynasty people on. So Lauren Elena, country singer. So lots of great episodes you can check out there. And then you can also find the quiz there as well, or just go to achieverquiz.com. And then it's at Mary Marantz on Instagram. I would love for you to come over and send me a DM after you listen to this episode. Let me know what your type is if you take the Achiever quiz, or just let me know something that really spoke to you.
Yes. And guys, we will definitely link to both of Mary's books in the show notes. Again, highly, highly recommend. I mean, I can't even think of how many times I've read a book twice, let alone listen to the audiobook, like for convenience, and thinking like, this was not enough. I've got to go back and actually sit down with this. And I also want to say, it's like my intention had been to underline things, but it's just so pretty. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. So we just had to settle for some sticky notes.
Yes. Love that. I love that.
Awesome. Well, Mary, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for the way that you use your experience to serve the small business community, and just for reminding people in everything that you do that their worth is not found in their work.